All right, welcome guys. Thank you so much for joining us for the Well-Rounded Musician with Alexa Tarantino. Over the coming weeks, Alexa is going to continue teaching viewers about the different kinds of tools that musicians need to succeed in the real world. This is a relatively new series for us here at Jazz at Lincoln Center. We've been really excited by the response, and thanks so much to everyone that's been joining us over the weeks. Tonight's episode is going to be part one of developing your musicality. The highlight of tonight is that the education doesn't stop when you get your diploma. Alexa will be discussing what you can do to take your skills and artistic voice further. For those of you who are new to our masterclass series, my name is Chloe. I am on the video team here at Jazz at Lincoln Center, and I'm happy to be here hosting the Well-Rounded Musician. If you need to ask me a question or say something during Alexa's lesson, feel free to shoot me a private chat. I'm keeping the chat private tonight. We've been dealing with some Zoom bombing and hackers over the past couple weeks, so just trying to play it safe tonight. So feel free to use that chat. We will open it up to Q&A later in the evening, and when that comes, I will jump in and explain how to ask a question. For now, I'll turn it over to Alexa, and we hope you all enjoy this session of the Well-Rounded Musician.
Thanks, Chloe. Chloe is our rock star host. I really appreciate her. So big round of applause, virtual applause for Chloe. Hi, everybody. I'm seeing some familiar faces from over the past few weeks. It's awesome to see you all. Thank you for joining, and happy Thursday. So I can't believe it. We are on episode 4 of the Well-Rounded Musician, which means it's been a whole other month since I've been here in quarantine in New York City, and same for all of you. We're doing it. We're doing great. Sending good vibes to everyone. So if you missed last week, we talked about defining your presence. And so we spent a lot of time discussing the tools that one would need to define and put forth your artistic presence in today's world. So that was bios, resumes, websites, press kits, social media, and all that good stuff. If you missed it and you have any questions, you can always visit me at my website, alexatarantino.com, or find me on social media at Alexa Tarantino. And other topics that we've covered have been a day in your life, discussing daily practices, time management, establishing priorities, productivity tips, and also creating your jazz community, which covered networking and contact databases and sharpening your communication methods and styles. So as we're going, if anybody has questions, we will take them at the end, as Chloe mentioned, and again, don't hesitate to get in touch. If you're new here, thanks for joining. I'm Alexa. I'm a saxophonist and woodwind doubler educator in New York. Happy to be here on behalf of Jazz at Lincoln Center, and hope to see more of you all through the series. So last week's 3 takeaways for anybody who missed it or who was already with us and is maybe following along with these little mini assignments. The first was to build your short, medium, and long biographies, and to build your CV spreadsheet that you can build resumes from. So keeping a large a spreadsheet just full of everything that you're doing, whether it's awards, grants, scholarships, volunteer partnerships, working with specific organizations, just keeping everything there so that when the time does come for you to pull a performance resume or an education resume or an administrative resume, if that happens to be the case, then you have everything you need there to pull, and you're not scrambling at the last minute to put your press materials together. And the third takeaway was to brainstorm your branding. What do you want to be presenting to people on social media, on your website, on your electronic press kit, and things like that. So today we're going to kind of put those housekeeping and press and publicity things aside, and we're going to talk about the music. We're going to talk about your artistic voice and what we can do to sharpen and cultivate that, especially during a time like in quarantine when we actually might have some more free time to dive into these things. So today's 3 main points. The first one is, they're going to be kind of a couple things here. The first one is on self-assessment, and we're going to talk about what makes you, you. What unique musical qualities do you want to continue cultivating? So I encourage you all to kind of think about this as we're going, and think about what are your strengths, what are the highlights of your musicianship that you want to keep and that you want to grow. Number 2 is another self-assessment point, and it's what elements do you feel you need to develop or strengthen to be able to execute your musical thoughts on your instrument, whatever it might be. What points kind of your musicianship do you think are a little bit weaker than some of the others? And then the third is to seek out a mentor and seek out opportunities to be a mentor. So we're going to dive into all these things today. And in case you missed it, every week I'm releasing a free download resource for all of you. And we've seen my 15 must reads, my reading list. We had 10 apps for creativity and productivity. This week, it's 10 ways to practice smarter. So Chloe has the link to sign up for that, and go ahead and just drop your email in there and you'll get it right immediately. And if you've already signed up for these downloads, you'll be getting them tomorrow in your inbox. So to define musicality, I sort of see it in 2 different groups, and I break it into 2 items. So I see one thing as being, musicality that's within you. And so to me, that means your artistic voice, your presence as an artist, like your vibe and your aura, and what you know as like your knowledge of jazz, of the history of whatever music or style you might be playing, of your instrument, and what you create. So there's this part of the musicality that's what is within you. And then I also see the other side, which is kind of how you perform, how you react, how you act and create and adapt in actual live musical settings with other people around you. So like how you deal with exterior situations, communicating with people musically, communicating with people on the bandstand, communicating in recording sessions, and being able to adapt into all of those different environments that are really necessary to creating a successful freelance career right now in today's world. So there's musicality, which is everything that you can kind of develop in your own little cocoon. And then there's outside of that cocoon, so much more to talk about. So tonight we're going to talk about what's in that cocoon, kind of the things that we can work on in our home, in our practice rooms, and looking inward. Next week, we'll talk about being able to adapt in all of those different environments. So we're talking about what you bring to the table, preparing and cultivating this and staying true to your own voice, but also gathering inspiration and knowledge so that you're ultimately prepared to deal with whatever musical situation comes your way. I love this Charlie Parker quote, which is to master your instrument, master the music, and then forget all about that and just play. So today we're going to be talking about the items that we will use to attempt to master the music. We can't ever fully master it, and what I love about this music is that we are lifetime students. We are eternal students through and through, and always finding new things, new approaches, new music, new people. So it's a beautiful thing, and that's what we're going to focus on today. So in this world of kind of the musicality in our cocoon, I think there are so many different elements that make you unique, that make somebody, Joe Schmo sound different from Bob over here. I could come up with better names. Let me think of that for next time. So there are so many different elements of our musicianship that make us different. The first thing is your sound and your tone. And for me, when I was getting started and really trying to figure out what do I want to sound like as a saxophonist, I mean, I remember just feeling like there were so many amazing saxophonists. What makes me different? What would I be able to contribute? And I knew that I loved the sounds of Phil Woods, Cannonball Adderley, Dick Oates, Kenny Garrett, and Charlie Parker, of course, but I also loved some tenor players. I loved Joe Henderson, I loved Dexter Gordon. So I just listened to those sounds non-stop, and it became kind of a point of playing along with the records and really trying to assimilate what they were doing on their instruments. Not to the point where I want to emulate them in my playing, because I don't think that when you hear me play, you might not say, oh, no, you sound like Dexter Gordon, or oh, you sound like Cannonball Adderley, but I would hope that you can hear little bits and pieces of influence from those people. So for me, that also means being able to access a wide variety of tone colors on your instrument. So you're going to hear, if you make a list of your top 10 favorite instrumentalists, and again, this doesn't have to be just horn players, but you make a list of your top 10, you're going to notice that they could all play a concert C so differently. Each one of those musicians is going to have a completely different world inside of that note, and that just comes from their unique musicality. And so for me, it was sort of about, how does he or she get this sound? Okay, I hear this fluffy sound. What am I supposed to do to get that? And so playing along with it, trial and error, and being able to take that little element and put it in my toolbox for later. So you know, that goes from everything from being able to subtone a note to being able to play with a little bit of an edgier sound, maybe like Kenny Garrett. And so I love being able to play along with people and sort of pull their little styles and then pick what I want to do for myself. So the next point, the next item I should say, within this little musicality cocoon is your phrasing and sounding human, sounding like you are playing with emotion. And so for me, with my students, I always tell them that they should sing first and then play. This is kind of like a major foundational element of my music education upbringing. I was always taught to do things by ear. And I just find that if you can really connect first with the music within your body and using your voice, it just has a much more stable foundation once you transfer it onto your instrument and you're dealing with fingerings and you're dealing with embouchure and technique and all of that. So sing, then play whenever you can, even if you're practicing scales, chords, intervals, etudes, whatever it might be. And make sure that you always know the lyrics to any tunes that you're learning. So there's this great Lester Young anecdote where he stopped playing in the middle of a song, and somebody was like, "What's up?" And he a ballad, and he had he reportedly said that he forgot the lyrics, and so he needed to stop. And I just think that's amazing because the lyrics define how we play a song 100%, absolutely. So if you're learning a new tune, if you're in this stage where you're kind of trying to grasp the American songbook or the jazz repertoire, always go to a definitive vocal version, whether it's Ella, Sarah, Carmen McRae, Dinah Washington, Nancy Wilson, Frank Sinatra, Mel Torme. Listen to those versions and really try to gather the emotion in the lyrics and then transfer that to your instrument as a horn player or a rhythm section player. And so in this idea of phrasing, I think, in one note has an entire envelope of sound. And if anybody here is like kind of a tech person and working maybe in Logic or GarageBand, like the technical term is literally envelope for the whole package of one note. And I think that that's really, it's interesting that they use that term because it makes total sense. As a horn player, just from my filling up of my abdomen with air, that's when it really starts for me, is getting the best absolute air control and support that I can. And as soon as that note starts, there's a whole world of sound within that note, between my air support, my breath control, my tone, and my vibrato, and all of this, and then the way that I release the note and kind of wrap it and tie a bow on at the end, or perhaps I kind of just let the note die out on its own and have sort of a raw impression of the note. So there are so many different ways to phrase things, and it can be based on the lyrics, it can be based on any type of emotion that you're feeling, it can be based on some type of musical idea that you're getting from somebody in the band when you're playing together. So you want to make sure that you have the capability to do all of these things. You want to have an understanding of how to phrase things. You want to be able to have a wide variety of articulations on your instrument, and excellent breath support and control if you are playing a wind instrument or brass instrument. And so for me, when I'm working on this, I just love to play ballads, learn ballads all day, and maybe just pick one ballad a week, learn the lyrics, listen to a billion versions, and you could take one phrase of a ballad and work on phrasing that as many different ways as possible. And there are infinite possibilities, and that's the beauty of it. And I think it's also important to play these solo. You don't even use a backing track, don't use a rhythm section, just really work on getting to the essence of the phrase and the essence of the tune solo. And then I think for some people who tuned in last time, I was talking about, based on one question I spoke about, being able to accompany yourself with bass lines and things like that. And so with this idea of practicing ballads solo, unaccompanied, to further demonstrate a sense of the chord changes and the harmony and the emotion that comes with the voice leading in the harmony, it could be a great exercise to work on almost playing a ballad like it's a Bach cello suite and giving us a 1-5, a root of the chord, play the fifth of the chord, and then play a little bit like a little of an improvisation on the chord and dive into the melody and connect to the melody that way. So you're like accompanying yourself and also outlining the chord changes. And that's a really beautiful way to learn ballads and to understand how to accompany yourself and have a very clear approach to harmony and chord changes. And this doesn't have to feel like so complicated. You could take the first 4 bars of a ballad and it could be a relatively open ballad, maybe something like In the Wee Small Hours of the Morning, which has just some very small changes in the harmony in the first few measures, or maybe something like My Funny Valentine, just to try to nail that idea down of phrasing and delivering the lyrics on an instrument. So next is vibrato, and this is a big part of phrasing because this makes a huge difference in the envelope of the note, like I was talking about. And so exercises that I practice to work on vibrato, I mean, there's so many different styles of vibrato. There's the Johnny Hodges Duke Ellington band style of vibrato, and then there's also just completely loosey-goosey, just go with the flow type of vibrato, and it's all dependent on the era that you're focusing on or the player that you're focusing on. So you want to be able to hit all those styles and all those players in terms of their type of vibrato. So I will often set a metronome, just if I'm kind of gearing or warming up my vibrato, I'll set a metronome at a quarter note equals 60, maybe quarter note equals 80 or 100. And I'll pick a note, maybe on alto saxophone, I'll play an A with an octave key, and I'll go, so that's vibrato at quarter note speed. And then I'll try 8th notes. And then I'll try triplets. And then 16ths. And then from there, I'll just kind of go as fast as I can. Whatever it might be. And it doesn't have to be regimented like 32nd notes or 64th notes or anything like that. But it's good to be able to have control of that. And so I know this is a little bit more geared towards wind and brass players, but it might be interesting to rhythm section players to kind of check out the next time you're playing with someone or the next time you're listening to someone, listen to their approach to vibrato and how does it impact that note. You could take that same 4-bar phrase of a ballad and play that phrase completely naked, no vibrato, nothing, straight tone. And then play it with vibrato the entire way through, like a kind of a thick vibrato all the way through. And it will make a difference in the delivery of the melody and the phrasing. And then my personal favorite is to like kind of intersperse vibrato throughout. And so even if you kind of play straight tone for the first few bars, and then by the time you get to the end, maybe you're holding a note and then you finally give a little something. So da 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 da, all straight tone. Da 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 da. Okay, I'm not a professional vocalist, but adding a little bit of vibrato there at the end and then tapering off added a little bit of motion to the note. And I think it grabs the listener a little bit. So it seems like something very small and minute, like, okay, vibrato, yep, it's just a little bit of a buzz, but actually it can make a huge difference in the way that you phrase even just one note. So again, you can play phrases completely straight tone, you can play phrases with complete vibrato, you can do something with complete vibrato and then kind of peter out the vibrato a little bit. You could do something with complete straight tone and then just add a little bit of vibrato towards the end. So come up with your unique style of what you like to do. And then this whole phrasing idea leads me to your approach to melody when you're actually improvising. So how are you developing themes as a soloist, as an improviser? You want to pick from the melody that we were just kind of working on, and you want to take intervals or themes from that melody and you want to work them and sort of mutate them and grow them and develop them, almost like you're planting a seed and the plant is growing. And so that everything that you're playing, these themes that you're improvising are still related there's still related material to the melody. It's not just completely unrelated, picked out of nowhere. So you always want to have a strong sense of the melody of the tune that you're playing, and then also be able to make that melody your own when it comes to improvisation. And I know, I have a feeling somebody will probably ask, like, is that how you're always improvising? Are you always focusing on the melody and not picking things out of thin air? And for me, I try to focus on thematic development, motivic development, probably 90% of the time. And 10% of the time in my improvisation, I will kind of be picking like little things from thin air, little flurries or sort of random patterns, or maybe there's an interjection that I heard from the band and something spurred something a little bit more random. But for the most part, my favorite part about improvisation is sort of taking something from an existing melody and weaving it in and out and turning it into something new and growing it into a different direction, maybe even sort of putting myself in a corner and having to find my way out. And then constantly creating new shapes, new ideas, new melodies and themes that have something that relates to the original melody. And then after kind of thinking about, what is my approach to melody? How do I improvise melodies? I mean, if you're going to do a self-assessment of this, you would want to maybe listen back to some recordings of yours and say, am I just playing licks the whole time? Are my fingers just flying? Am I leaving any space for anybody to process what I'm saying? Am I communicating with the rhythm section at all? So just take note in terms of self-assessment of your improvisation and listen back and see kind of where your tendencies lie. After looking at your approach to melody, let's talk about your approach to harmony. And so this is a huge world to dive into, but just to get into a little bit, this means understanding basic phrase models in jazz. To me, that's what this means. And so that means being able to recognize when there's a 2-5-1 in the chord changes, or when there's a 3-6-2-5-1 in the chord changes. And so many great American songbook tunes have very similar phrase models and are built off of just different plugging, like different sort of building blocks of phrase models together. A phrase model is like a musical sentence. And so a 2-5-1, that's a phrase model. 3-6-2-5-1, that's a phrase model. Maybe like 2 descending 2-5-1s resolving at the end, you could consider that one phrase model. So if you're working on a song and learning a song, take a look, and I kind of do a little bit of an analysis, and I'll bracket out my chord changes and say, okay, this song starts on the 2 chord and it goes to a 2-5-1 here and it lands on the 4 chord. So do this type of analysis to the songs that you're checking out and try to get an understanding of where some of these phrase models might lie. And that actually helps you to learn tunes faster, because you might be on a jam session and somebody might say, let's play I'll Remember April. And you might say, okay, I know that song, but it's a little hazy. And this way somebody can just say to you, okay, it starts on 1, major 7, major 6, and then it alternates, it actually goes to the minor, blah, 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 and then like 2-5-3-6-2-5-1, then the bridge goes here. So being able to zoom out on a tune, and instead of looking bar by bar or measure by measure, we want to try to look in larger groups, which is these phrase models. And so when you're looking at your approach to harmony, when I say I want you to understand these phrase models, really what that means is you want to be able to demonstrate improvising over these phrase models. So you want to be comfortable and really be able to nail a 2-5-1 in any key. You want to be able to nail a 3-6-2-5-1 in any key. And that takes a little bit of practice and sort of building your way up to playing different levels of vocabulary. But even just the most basic element would be getting comfortable playing the bass lines and just playing the roots. Do 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 do, and then expanding to the arpeggios. Do 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 do, and getting comfortable with that and adding some rhythm. So So just taking it step by step and really analyzing, what level am I at with my harmony? Am I able to run off all my dominant 7 chords? Am I able to play through all my 2-5-1s and all 12 keys? And just make note of where you're at and set some goals in terms of your approach to harmony. To take that to the next level, beyond those phrase models, I think more advanced players, it would be interesting to sort of assess your understanding of using colors and extensions in your playing. So making sure you're comfortable demonstrating and identifying all of the different extensions on a dominant chord, on a major chord, on a minor chord, on a half diminished chord. So being able to, you know, if your piano player all of a sudden throws in a sharp 5, sharp 9, you don't want to have to sit and think to yourself, okay, what was that? You want to be able to recognize it instantly and fire it back in the middle of a solo and pick out those extensions and be able to do that in any key. And I do have some exercises that I like to do in that situation. You're welcome to ask me later on, but I just want to make sure we get through everything. So under this harmonic umbrella, the phrase models, understanding of colors and extensions, and understanding how to create tension and release in your lines through there. So perhaps, you know, staying on some chord tones for a bit in a phrase that you're playing, and then understanding that if you move away from those chord tones, you're creating some tension, and then finding a way to resolve that and create the release. So just thinking of your approach to harmony in those larger, I would say with those larger goals in mind, is just a great way to assess your progress. And then next, you want to assess your rhythm. Are you constantly playing eighth notes? Are you constantly playing quarter notes? Or are you not leaving enough space? So really listening to all different styles of music, listen to all different types of solos, and see how are people communicating with the drummer, the bassist, and the pianist, and what types of rhythms are helpful to engaged, and how can you adapt your vocabulary and your current way of playing to incorporate more rhythm. And for me, that will be just picking a rhythm and literally playing that rhythm the whole time during a practice chorus on a tune. If I'm working on a particular rhythm, if I'm working on a particular meter, I'll just play that the entire time, and I'll just be improvising notes. You know, if I'm working on do do da do do da, which is, I don't know if I've done that, but do dee do do dee do do dee do do dee bo bo be bo ba 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 ba, that type of thing, going all the way through a chorus like that. Again, sorry for my singing. A few more things here, and I really want to open up for questions, so I'm gonna move a little bit quicker here. So arguably the most important thing that you need to be able to demonstrate an understanding of is the history of this music, where this music comes from, and any influences that are really strong for you. Perhaps you have a mentor, perhaps there are some records that were really influential from you, and all that's going to come through in your musicality. So whatever you're learning, learn it to the fullest, learn it absolutely inside out. Don't just surface understand it, really dig into it so that it becomes a second nature for you. And so there are a lot of records for me that I know if I hear them, like walking through a store, I would just start subconsciously singing along to some of the solos because I've listened to them that many times. And so that's where you want to get to on every level if you can. And so transcription is a really great way to get there as well. I always recommend transcribing as much as you can. Let's see what else I've got here. Okay, and your ears. So your ear training. Where are your ears at? Can you sing intervals? Can you sing chords? Can you transcribe away from your instrument? That's a really great challenge. I love transcribing on a plane or on a park bench. And then we talked about your knowledge of repertoire. Understanding many different styles of tunes is imperative. And knowing the major tunes in the jazz songbook is also super important so that you can communicate with other musicians. And then I think lastly, I just want to mention your understanding of different instruments is super important, and understanding the roles that they play. So if I'm a saxophonist on a gig, and if I don't have a clear understanding of the role of the bass player and how the bass player is outlining the harmony and shaping the chord changes and emphasizing, able to control the groove and the feel at any time by switching from maybe a 2 feel to a 4 feel and things like that. If I don't understand and have my ears open for that, I'm ignoring a huge part of the group communication. And so, like I talked about a little bit last week and how I touched on a little today, it's important if I'm trying to get into that bass player world, I need to be able to act like a bass player. I need to be able to play bass lines for somebody as if I'm the bass player and they're soloing. So that's also a really great exercise, is to understand and take a lesson with a bass player friend, or just call somebody up for 15 minutes and ask a few questions. Same with drummers, same with guitarists, same with bassists, or if you're a rhythm section player, talk to the horn players and just get an understanding for what they're doing so that you can complement them better. I know that if I hear a bass player ascending in their range on my solo, I'm going to want to do something to contrast that, to complement it, and I'm going to want to descend as they're doing that. Same for pianists. If I hear the pianist is like kind of way up here in the upper register, I want to sort of venture into my low register. And yeah, so that's it. That's a long list of elements from me that I find all contribute to your musicality and to defining your unique voice. So while you should have an understanding of all of these elements, you want to make them yours. So you do want to be able to play, you know, every style and every era, because you want to be able to say yes to a gig if you get asked to play a traditional New Orleans style jazz gig. But maybe your unique voice is really somewhere else. Maybe you're more of a modern jazz player, but it's still great to have those skills under your tool belt to be able to create a well-rounded career, as we'll discuss next week. So I think the bigger picture here for all of us is to not be afraid of finding out what we need to improve on. Don't be afraid. Don't shy away from what you need to improve on. Don't be afraid to seek out a mentor and ask for lessons, ask for help, ask questions. Also, don't be afraid to seek out someone that you can mentor. I've found that teaching is the best way to deepen your understanding of what you thought you already knew. So, you know, when you have to explain something to a student, it only solidifies and deepens that much more in your own work. And yeah, the highlight, I guess, is just that the education does not stop when you get your diploma or when you finish your school year. We're always, always, always working. So we want to ask, what can I do to stay on top of my game? Don't get complacent, try new things, stick to your practice routines if you can. And hopefully my 10 tips to practice smarter will be helpful today. And then I think the last little thing to remember is just that life experience contributes so much to your musical voice and your artistic voice. And when you look at the history of this music, that is what it is. This music comes from emotion. This music comes from storytelling. And so the more life experience that you get and the more that you can focus on staying well and exercising and being self-aware and developing a healthy relationship with technology and not letting it take over, and just traveling and growing and trying new things, all of that I think contributes to your musical being. So with that, I'd love to open it up for questions and hear what you all are thinking about this.
Yes, cool. Thank you, Alexa, for that. We've got lots of lovely people watching on Facebook. So I just want to take a moment before we jump into questions to remind everyone that this is the Well-Rounded Musician with Alexa Tarantino, if you're just joining us, brought to you by us, Jazz at Lincoln Center in New York City. Before we start with the Q&A, I want to thank Alexa and all of our supporters who contribute to our cause and help us do what we can to serve the global jazz community during this strange time. We wouldn't be here without you, and your support means everything to us. Okay, on to Q&A. If you have a question you'd like to ask here in Zoom, we're going to ask you to use the raise hand feature. Just click the participants tab on the bottom of your screen and press the raise hand button. I will unmute your mic and you can ask your question. You can also feel free to shoot me a chat here in Zoom. I will be monitoring that. And if you are on Facebook, please feel free to type your questions into the comment section here on Facebook. I'll be monitoring that as well. So let's begin. So please feel free to raise your hand. Let's find a good question on Facebook. There are a few people. Let's see. Come on, folks, in Zoom.
I cover everything. Wow.
Oh, there we go. Hi, Grace.
Hello, how's it going?
Are you there, Grace?
Oh, hi, Grace. I know you.
Yeah, good to see you.
Hey, thanks for hanging.
Yeah, thanks for having this chat. I wanted to ask a question about how your practice routine changed since getting out of college, whether it was undergrad or master's, something that changed about your practice routine that maybe benefited you in a way. Just curious about that.
Yeah, sure. First of all, I am so happy to see you. Grace was one of my students, and I guess this is a good example probably of hopefully like, mentor, mentee, and just trying to be there and supportive to people in the community. And Grace actually got involved with my summer jazz program and has always been like a super go-getter and very entrepreneurial, minded. So this is a fun example to show the people that have been with us for the past couple weeks, actually. So in terms of my my practice routine, when I was at Eastman, I had a super regimented practice routine, and I was doing things like minute by minute. And actually, in my download, I talk about that, and I still try to do that to keep things really like 15 to 20-minute chunks, very focused, away from technology, using a timer, just to maximize my time and my focus, and then take a break to like stretch or whatever, like go for a quick walk. And so I think in my studies, I had very focused, short periods of time, and I was generally working towards like an assignment or working towards a goal, an education related goal, something for a teacher, something for a lesson. And I think the biggest change now is that I don't have that. So I don't have somebody saying, get this etude to me by next week or transcribe this solo next week. And so while I still try to maintain because of my schedule with, touring or teaching, not now touring, but with teaching or whatever other administrative stuff, I do have to try to keep it to that regimented schedule. But now I think I'm just playing for fun a little bit more. And I try to just play a song that I haven't played in a while, or I'll open up a book, and I'm actually, now I find that I'm practicing more things because I'm like drawn to them, not because I have to. And so I am revisiting like my close etudes or the Omni book and trying to do things in all 12 keys. So I think I'm like revisiting the foundational elements, but putting my own spin on them. And so like if I'm playing through the Omni book, I'm trying to do things in different keys, or maybe like stretch them out or work them into a different way, like to kind of twist them into my own thing. Or with the close at etudes and other chord scale studies, trying to find new ways of fitting them into my own style of improvisation. So I guess my practice feels a little bit more creative now would be the answer. But it's definitely, it can be harder because you are the source of your own self-assessment. You're doing self-assessment, constant self-assessment, and you're also having to kind of start your own, jumpstart your own inspiration and creativity and ideas, as opposed to having a teacher that can guide you.
Awesome. That's super helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Grace. Okay, we got a question on Facebook. This question's from Liam. Liam says, you mentioned how it's important to learn other instruments. How have you attempted to start doing that? Or how have you done that in the past?
Great question, Liam. So I actually was super lucky when I was at Eastman. We had to take a semester of jazz bass, and we had to take a semester of jazz drums. Bass and I were not great friends, but drums and I have stuck together, and I am always the first faculty member at a jazz camp to volunteer to play, and maybe like the student, like the young student combo if they need a drummer. So I think I actually started on piano and saxophone at the same time. So I guess bass and guitar are my two weakest rhythm section instruments. And I'm just I don't have like a solid grasp of the whole string thing. I took many courses on violin and viola and cello, all for my music education degree in college. And I think it's just it's become a little bit foggy for me. But I really love the drums and I love the piano. And so I've always I've always enjoyed just checking out records by drummers, bands led by drummers, and seeing the different grooves that they're putting on certain compositions, or certain styles that they're using, and certain hits and things like that. Rhythms that I can pull into my playing are always real. That's always super helpful, and it affects my compositions too, because I am often kind of stuck on maybe the groove or the style of a tune. And so a lot of times I can kind of listen to some of those, Art Blakey records, or, listen to Jimmy Cobb, and who we just recently lost. And he's an excellent example of being able to play any style. And so that listening back to those grooves and things really helped to kind of jumpstart my inspiration for my writing. I would say that for people like trying to figure out what to do in terms of learning new instruments, call up a friend who plays one and just get a mini lesson in terms of what do you do behind a soloist? What are you doing on those 2-5-1s? And then really the next time you're playing with a group, hopefully socially distanced, just really listen to what that person is doing. Make your ears should be larger than yourself. So when I'm playing, I'm trying not to listen to myself. I'm trying to listen to everything around me. So just being able to pick up understanding every piece and every limb on the drums, and understanding how things mesh is super important.
Awesome. Thanks for your question, Liam. All right, we have a really great question from Melissa here in Zoom. She says, as you mentioned, we never completely master this music. Most of us can probably make a longer list of things we feel like we need to improve on than things we like about our playing. How do you manage the mental aspect of the music? Confidence, not getting defeated, being willing to put yourself out there in a jam session, etc. How did you approach vulnerability in music when you may not always feel like you are ready to put yourself out there?
That's an awesome question, Melissa. And I still am learning in this department. I still get nervous about jam sessions. I've never been like a big jam session person, to be honest. And I think I don't know if it's something that ever goes away. I think as an artist, as a creative person in the field, there are always going to be people that are better than us. And there are always going to be people that we could help, or that could learn something from us, or that we could teach. And so I think it's important to realize that everybody is in the same boat. Everybody, maybe with the exception of a few like child prodigies, everybody's in the same boat. Everybody's on their own path. And so for me, at a certain point, I remember when I was in high school, I actually wasn't sure that I would make it as a performer. And so I thought, well, I know I love teaching. I know a lot of people will say, oh, did you do education as a fallback? Did you do blah, blah, blah? And I can't stress to you enough how education is so not a fallback, because it's harder than playing. It's so much more difficult to express concepts and ideas and things to a student musically than it is just to play it on stage. So if anybody ever says that to anybody, send them to me. And so where was I going? Oh, so I thought I love teaching. I know I'm going to want to teach forever in some capacity. So maybe I'll just do education, because I didn't think I would get in for performance. And I was scared to put myself out there. And then I did, I guess I just applied, and it turns out that I did end up getting in for performance at Eastman. And I think it had just been, I think it was honestly me kind of maybe a little bit of fear, uncertainty, insecurity. Of course, it can also be hard when you're the only female in a lot of situations at a young age. It's a little discouraging. You're kind of not sure maybe where you stand. And so I think with all of those factors, I definitely was feeling insecure. But when I went to Eastman, I sought out, and I had some incredible mentors. And most of them were men, and they were just so supportive and so helpful. And I think, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, it's about finding that community that supports you and lifts you up, even when you aren't feeling supportive of yourself. So I think I still have like motivational quotes all over my practice books, all over my desk, because there are days when I wake up, I'm like, I can't look at the saxophone because I'm not where I want to be. And I just have to realize that I've been very lucky. To be able to make music is a gift in itself, and it makes somebody happy. Even if I could only play hot cross buns, I would hope that I could walk into maybe a hospital or maybe a nursing home and play somebody Hop Cross Buns and Happy Birthday, and that would make their day. And I don't have to be able to play 26/2 in all 12 keys at the perfect tempo to make somebody happy with music. So at the end of the day, just remember that that's what it's all about.
Melissa gave you a thumbs up. Awesome. All right. All right, let's get an in-person question from someone we've heard from before a few times, Mr. Les Rose. Hey, Les.
Hey, Les.
Oh, trying to unmute you, Les.
Hi, Les.
Oh, no, Les, let me unmute you.
Oh,
There you are.
There we go.
All right.
Welcome back.
Oh, great to be back. Wonderful concert. Everybody should be supporting your concerts. They are amazing. And what a textbook for duo playing to strengthen your phrasing that you were talking about, and to strengthen your sense of bass lines, and strengthen especially your sense of time and where you are in the tune. Just an interesting thing to follow up with the answer that you just gave. That anxiety of competing, jamming, playing in front of people has been there forever. I mean, look at the story of Charlie Parker, whether it's a real story or not.
Yeah.
It's a story that's out there that, you know, he did very poorly at a jam session.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way. But one thing that is interesting that everyone here could take advantage at this time is nobody's running out to do jam sessions next week. It's not. And so maybe this is the time to not so much worry about who you sound in comparison to, but how you really want to grow, what you want to do to grow as a player. So,
yeah.
And that probably ties into, you know, week one with your routine and the suggestion of taking lessons. And I agree. This is an amazing time, if it's in your means, pardon me, to take lessons, because that will satisfy both. It will get you on a project, and it will motivate you, and you won't have that feeling of like, oh, who do I have to compete with tomorrow or next week?
Right.
And it gives you that routine that's really, really valuable.
Right.
So I wanted to support all of that. If it's okay to ask a question that related a little more to last week, because that was a huge topic.
Of course.
So with the website and with the photos and with all of the things that you put on your website, two quick questions. Do you need permission in one way or another to use a photo of someone else, let's say students or a student band or something like that? The reason why I ask is years ago when I ran marching band tournaments and band tournaments, and they would have a house photographer and videographer, they would always come and say, you know, sign this disclaimer, you know. And so what's the rule on that? And then also with regard to using sheet music for your lessons. Let's say you want to send a chart, a lead sheet, for instance, to a student. Would you be able to legally scan something by Hal Leonard Publications or Jamie Aebersold or any of the other publications that themselves are probably have a copyright? So it's a chunk of business, but
no, that's good. That's great.
Yeah.
So the first question in terms of the media, so I think before with my education programs, like actually with my jazz workshop, where we would get maybe 75 kids in 1 week, and you don't always meet all the parents, and you don't always get to say hi to everybody face to face and introduce yourself. And at the same time, technology has become so immediate and so instantaneous that somebody could be taking a photo of you and you don't even know it, and you don't have time to say you're not comfortable with it, right? Like I've been on the subway many times and there have been tourists and they like the look of my saxophone case, so they'll take a picture of me without asking. And a few times I was kind of grumpy and I said, can you please delete that or whatever. But if somebody likes the look of the saxophone, I don't know, whatever, that's a whole other story. But all this to say, in my registration forms now for programs, I will just say, please note, we do have a photographer that comes through to take media for promotional purposes, for, just like documentation for the video, like YouTube videos, or, class photos at the end of the camp, and for our flyers and things like that. And I always just say, if you would prefer that your child be exempt from this media, please let me know. So I would rather have a list of the people that definitely can't be photographed than a list of people that said they would be okay being photographed. So that way, before the camp starts, I know that when, the such and such Daily Times is coming, to send them only to a specific few classrooms. So that's how that works. And I generally, when I go to do a master class or a live performance, I almost always try to get a recording or videos for it, because I might be there on behalf of sponsorship of a particular company, and I have to send the company, like, think this is the group, everybody loved it, or just for my CV and for my teaching, maybe if I need to submit some educational work, I use that as an example. And so I will often just ask beforehand, does anybody mind? If you mind, I'll keep you out of it or whatever. But for the most part, I think people are so used to it now that I haven't had many people say, I don't want to be in it. And then for the sheet music, to be honest, I don't know, because I don't use a ton of those materials. If I'm working with a student, most of the time I write out their exercises and things like that, or if it's a tune that's found in the real book. Students usually have the books, but I do have, I think there are instances where you have a PDF of something and you want to send it, and to be honest, I'm not quite sure what the rules are in that case. I think it's always best to encourage students to buy the hard copy book when possible. I think it just works. I think teaching and learning works better on hard copy, but I think with the digital stuff, it's hard to keep track of everything. And even if you have a copyright on something, it can be really hard to try to track everything down. And I'm not sure, I think unfortunately, a lot of people would be at a disadvantage if those electronic versions of the real books weren't flying around. So I don't know, it's a tough one.
Right. And so much of the Great American Songbook is public domain.
Right.
So for the most part, one wonders how someone like Hal Leonard or Jamie Abersol, why they would actually put the copyright on the bottom, and it would say copyright 1930, and then they would say it would be revised or reviewed. So it's a little bit of a murky subject, but I think you're right. I think that everything is just so out there, and no one could keep track of anything anymore, that
Yeah.
you
just gotta be cool.
Yeah, just roll with it. And if someone says, block out my picture from 5 years ago, then you just do it.
That'll be it. Yeah, exactly.
All right,
Thank you so
let's
much.
move on. Thank you, Les.
Thank you.
All right, we're approaching 10. I want to get to a couple more questions. So let's go quickly to a question from another Liam, or maybe it's the same Liam, who knows. Hi, Liam.
Hi, Liam.
You there?
Yeah, so no, I was gonna say,
You're really quiet, Liam. Uh-oh. Okay,
Oh, wait, there he is.
Hello?
yeah, can you hear me?
You're super quiet. Let's try. Let's see if we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
No.
Go ahead and ask your question. I can hear you a bit. I can always translate.
All right, yeah, no, but I was gonna say I was the in that asked question. And thank you for that. But this question is like really general. So, I haven't really like been as fluent in the jazz repertoire as like I hope to be. I was just wondering, what would you say would be like your favorite jazz album like all time? Because I feel like I don't really know my jazz albums too well, and I just wanted to listen like that.
Gotcha. Did you hear that, Alexa?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, I got you. I got you, Liam. He wanted to know that he said he wants to build his jazz repertoire a little bit. And he's not a big jazz guy, but he wants to sort of like have a place to start. If you have any recommendations on albums that you like, your favorite jazz albums.
Okay, great. Awesome. Great question. I love just first off, just learning the blues. So Coltrane Plays the Blues is a great one. Just like learning as much about that foundational element as possible, and being able to play that in any key if you can, the 12 bar blues. So Coltrane Plays the Blues. I love this Dexter Gordon record called Daddy Plays the Horn. I also love Coltrane's Ballads record, going back to the ballads talk. And then I also love, there's so much. There's Nancy Wilson and Cannonball Adderley, which that's like a great place to start with in terms of like lyrics. You know, like she just sings so beautifully, and then Cannonball crushes it. And any of those, Cannonball and Nat Adderley, like Nat Adderley and Cannonball, their quintet live in San Francisco. Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers at Cafe Bohemia. A lot of those records have like some standards or some just like blues rooted tunes that are really fun, and more like riff based tunes as well, that you could just start picking up by ear and playing along with.
Cool. Maybe, Alexa, as I do my spiel, you can type some of those album titles in the chat for Liam and for others. Thanks, Liam.
Can I get out of the private chat, or is that at the end?
Here, I'll open it up for you. Okay. While Alexa's typing her albums, I just want to say to everybody that we have a bunch of stuff coming up, including more sessions of The Well-Rounded Musician and a ton of other live events that we're hosting for free throughout the coming weeks. Masterclasses, concerts, lessons, interactive conversations, the like. A new episode of The Well-Rounded Musician will be streamed live every Thursday at this very same time. That's 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Next week will be part 2 of Developing Your Musicality. That will be discussing how you perform, react, act, create, and adapt in musical settings. This is also kind of an exciting new announcement. We are so excited to announce the first ever virtual Essentially Ellington High School Jazz Band Festival, which will take place the week of June 8th through 12th. Events include an At Home with EE alumni concert, composition and arranging class with Ted Nash, and of course, band performances from our 18 finalist bands and 5 international bands. These kids are unbelievably talented, and we're really trying to make sure they have a festival to remember since they can't be in our hall this year. Please be sure to check it out and help them give the support they deserve. Most of those events are public, so please feel free to join us that week. And for a full list of upcoming events and archive concerts, please check out Jazz at Lincoln Center's brand new online hub at jazz.org. Let's take a final question. This is a good question from Gary in the chat. Gary wants to know, how did you, Alexa, start to form your own playing and soloing style? Is it enough just to listen to the masters and aim to be as melodic as they are, or aim to play just like them, or does it come automatically in time?
Hi, Gary. Were you watching on Sunday night? Are you the Gary? Awesome. Thank you so much. Nice to see you face to face. Thank you for your question. Yeah, so I think in terms of developing your own improvisational style, I think really the biggest foundation is to be able to play along with and like the masters. So it's sort of like, it's like trying all the foods before you know which ones you like and you don't like. And so from there, I think there are certain concepts and certain eras and certain styles that you find that you really gravitate towards. Like for me, I love the more sort of like angular and modern touch that maybe like Kenny Garrett and Dick Oates have, but I also love like the kind of lush and round and buzzy sounds of like Johnny Hodges, Phil Woods, and Cannibal Adderley. So I kind of like to mix. I think I might be a little bit of a mix of those kind of two ends of the spectrum. But at the same time, like I really love to be on a big band gig that's playing all like Duke Ellington, Johnny Hodges, or I'm happy to be in a modern jazz kind of quintet format, playing a little bit more edgy and angular stuff. So I think in terms of like developing and presenting yourself as a freelance musician, it's important to be able to do everything. And but I think in finding those things that you gravitate towards and that you like, there's almost a way to bring them into whatever you're doing. Like if you find what is really unique to you and you're playing that, let's say, more angular style, more modern style. I know so many people that have that as their essence, but then they sound so beautiful and so unique and so different when they go to play something maybe in the style of Johnny Hodges or a ballad feature and an Ellington style thing. So I think that once you find what you like, you have to stick to it, and it becomes a matter of making it a part of everything that you do and not letting different settings or different styles shift those things about you.
Cool.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, Gary. All right, that's all we have time for today, guys. We're a bit over 10 p.m., but we really hope you join us again next week and for other Jazz at Lincoln Center events. Thank you so much for tuning in on Zoom or on Facebook, wherever you're watching from. We really appreciate it. And if you want to keep in touch with us, please follow us on Instagram or Twitter. That's jazz.org, spelled out, jazz.org. Or you can just search Jazz at Lincoln Center on Facebook. Once again, my name is Chloe. I'm on the video team here at Jazz at Lincoln Center. I'm happy to be with you here tonight. And the last thing I'll say, if it's within your means, please consider making a donation. Jazz at Lincoln Center is a nonprofit organization, and we continue to be committed to entertaining, enriching, and expanding a global community for jazz. Contributions of any amount are extremely meaningful to artists of all kind. And to our supporters and donors, we cannot thank you enough. Thanks again, everybody. I'm just going to turn it over to Alexis to say goodbye, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks for being here. Next week, we'll dive into this topic even more, talking about the things kind of outside your musical cocoon and what happens when you're in those musical settings with other people and creating and adapting and reacting. So again, just our 3 takeaways, if you're following along from the beginning, is number 1 would be a self-assessment of what makes you you and what can you celebrate about yourself and your playing that you want to grow and cultivate that you really like. Part 2 would be what elements of your playing can you strengthen? What do you want to develop? Maybe what do you feel you're lacking? And then number 3 would be make a list of some people you could seek out as a mentor, and also start to seek out and create some opportunities for you to get that experience to mentor other people and help others. So thanks so much, and go out there and make it happen, and I'll see you next Thursday.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Thanks, Alexa.
Bye. Thanks, Chloe.